I know he only loved my face, a face almost identical to his white moonlight. But I couldn't stop loving him for 8 years. Nameless and unacknowledged, I stayed by the CEO's girlfriend's side. I watched her start out as a naive intern and turn into a business powerhouse. But I knew there had always been something in her heart, an idealized first love. Now his white moonlight has returned. I thought it was time for me to go. So why, when people heard I was leaving, he's been frantically searching for me up to now. It's been 10 years since I joined Shen Group. Along the way, I rose from an unnoticed intern to the CEO's secretary. But today, I'm here at Shen Group to submit my resignation. I thought leaving would be a hassle. I expected it would take about a month for me to leave, but it wasn't nearly that complicated. In just a few hours, I handed all the files to another secretary. Although she didn't show, the entire process today reached him. He signed off without hesitation. In hindsight, I can see why. After all, he'd been waiting 8 years for the white moonlight. Is back. I was only his stand-in for his first love. Now, the real one is back, and I'm just the substitute. It's over. Goodbye to who I once was, the place I fought for. Goodbye, Shenjichi. I was disappointed and I was sad. Most of all, I loved you. As for Shenjichi and me, our meeting wasn't anything special. Like a drama, both of us fell in love at first sight. Then, as the two of us spent time together, it was nothing special. 2 years ago, because the woman he loved so deeply suddenly left the country and vanished. The Ning family disappeared overnight, as if they'd never existed. Shenjichi couldn't bear his white moonlight. The shock of her disappearance came overnight. He faked being drunk at the bar. His looks and figure were both top tier. Naturally, she drew a lot of attention. That night, after she drank too much, a crowd of men closed in. A group of men were groping Shenjichi's body. But Shenjichi fought them off fiercely. I happened to be at the bar and ended up saving her. Afterwards, Shenjichi stared at my face. She paused for a moment, then said seriously, "Gu Chengyan, be my boyfriend. I'll pay you every month." When I heard Shenjichi's words, I immediately agreed. Everyone knew I had agreed. In President Shen's heart there lived an idealized first love, but no one knew. But I had a white moonlight of my own. The white moonlight was from the Shen Group. This was wrong, I knew. All he loved was my face, a face that was 90% like his white moonlight. I couldn't help falling for him. Shenjichi had no idea that the first time we met wasn't at Shen Corp. It was back in my sophomore year when she, as a top university graduate, returned to campus to give a speech. She wore a white dress and smiled. She spoke to inspire all the underclassmen present. I fell in love with him at first sight. I made him my lifelong pursuit. I knew he was backed by the wealthy Shen family. So after graduation, I gave it everything I had, so I could one day stand by his side at Shen Corp. When I started working, I was like a graduate of the same university. A younger colleague started looking out for me. I learned fast and handled my work well. I endured hardship upon joining Shen Group. In just 2 years, a complete transformation into outstanding ability, which impressed Shenjichi. He specially appointed me as his secretary. A month later, I saved him at a bar. We started dating. Since I got together with him, he would treat me the same way he treated Ning Chi. He liked me in white suits. He liked me to wear a watch. He liked me to eat the meals he cooked. But he didn't know I was allergic to seafood. He especially liked it when I ate seafood. In our 3rd year together, because Shenjichi came from a powerful family, a well-established business, his relatives wanted him to marry and have a child, to carry on the Shen family business. Shenjichi was naturally annoyed by all this. After all, in his heart, he only wanted Ning Shi. He was going to have a family and heirs. I was merely Shenjichi's fleeting lover. She privately told me I was her boyfriend, but to others, I was just her secretary. At that time, I loved Shenjichi deeply. I couldn't stand seeing her every day, worn down by her parents' pressure. I suggested that she and I adopt one. She thought it over for a while. Finally, she agreed. In the end, we adopted a little girl named Shen Ruan. Ruan, she was adorable with big, bright eyes. Her eyes seemed to hold a little galaxy. Her eyes, like Shenjichi's, were lively and bright. Their eyes were so alike, after years of leaning on each other. I thought my passion could... She melted Shenjichi's cold heart ever since Ruan. Ruan arrived. She became warmer toward both me and Ruan. Became more patient and gentler. She also began to rely on me much more. I thought we'd be together forever. Until a few weeks ago, I saw The three, Shenjichi, Ningqi, and Shenruan. They'd gone to Nanyang and took lots of photos at the sites. Their smiles proved they were the real family. It was also proof they had never treated me like that, Shenjichi. She'd never smiled at me like that. I held it in. I felt the bitterness and ache in my heart. I waited for mother and daughter to return. They didn't return until night. From their faces, you could tell they were still basking in it, as if I were the one who had stolen their happiness. And I never imagined, after all my hardships, the Shenruan I'd raised for 5 hard years would speak to me so coldly. Why are you in this house? You're not my dad. My dad is Ningxi. My real dad's back. The moment you left, something inside me shattered. I felt hurt, sad, and embarrassed. I was panicking, and beside me, Shenjishi's silence told me she already knew. The real one came back, even after 8 years by his side. I was tossed aside without a second thought. Abandoned. My father left me as a child. My mother called me a burden. That night, I packed up and left. I ran off with my bag. I was raised in an orphanage. I knew how priceless parental love is to a child, how precious it was. When I first adopted Shenruan, she was only a few months old. For 5 years, I poured nearly all my love. They put it all on her. They say a father's love is steady and enduring. A father's love is quiet and steady. A father's love is always giving quietly behind the scenes. But my love for Ruan was boundless. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking, was my whole life just a joke? The next day was my 32nd birthday. Since I moved in with Shenjichi, I've always celebrated my birthdays with her. She'd wait for me to blow out the candles, then, in a sleepy little voice, would say, "Happy birthday, Daddy." But on that birthday, Shenjichi and Shenruan weren't home. They weren't home. I sat at the table staring at the cake in a daze. The minutes ticked by, but they never came. When they finally returned home, it was 2 a.m. when Ruan got home. She was clutching her doll to her chest, murmuring to herself. "The toy Daddy gave is so pretty," she kept saying. Then he glanced at me. He only nodded and went back to his room. He'd even forgotten. On this day in past years, he'd always be holding her and saying, "Happy birthday" to me. Jichi was busy undressing when he saw. He only remembered my cake then. Yesterday was my birthday. Maybe out of guilt, he made the first move. He pulled me into a hug and tried to kiss me. He reeked of smoke and had a hickey on his. "Baby, I was working late last night. Tell me what you want. I'll get it for you. I'll be with you for every birthday from now on." I just shook my head. I didn't want any of it. I only wanted your love. But I knew that after today, it was over between her and me. It was over. The next day, I planned to go to the company and resign. The 10-year chapter of my life. Actually, I needed to put a period on it. I should have recognized him earlier. Ningxi had suddenly returned to the country. My years-long white moonlight returned. I was only a stand-in. How could I possibly compete? But I kept hoping he'd had that one moment. He had loved me, but I was overestimating myself. I overestimated myself. The resignation went smoothly. It was all with Shenjichi's silent approval. After I left Shen Group, I used my phone. I texted break up. Then I returned to the apartment I shared with Shenjichi. I packed my bags. After I finished packing, only then did I realize this house I'd lived in with her for years held everything that was mine so simply. One suitcase. That day, I went straight to the airport. In the 6 months after I left here, I wandered from city to city. In the end, I settled in another city. I'd been saving for years. I bought my own place outright. It's small, but perfect for living alone. I also found a new job at a company much like the Shen Group. Both are tech RD companies. They've been rivals in business for years. Su Xingyun is a formidable woman. Unlike Shenjichi, who inherited the family business, she built hers. She started from scratch and worked her way up. He's been very capable since college. She founded a company while still at university. She relied on her own grit along the way. She turned it into today's Xingyun technology, all by herself. I never expected him to personally extend an olive branch to me. She offered me a job at Xingyun as technical director at the tech company. On my first day, I voiced my concerns. Su Xingyun smiled and shook her head. She said earnestly, "I trust my judgment. Your talent showed itself long ago. At Shen's, being just a mere executive secretary is such a waste. You're capable of much more. You're more capable than you realize." I didn't expect him to trust me like that. Maybe it's because I've been around him for years. Shenjichi's innate insecurity and his occasional barbs had already eroded my confidence. Because I was an outside technical director hire, many longtime staff were skeptical of me. But my skills and hard work meant it took just 6 months for them to see me in a new light. Since I joined Xingyun Technology, I feel time has flown by. Another year has passed. One evening, Su Xingyun and I, at the office, after we finished reviewing a new proposal. It was already past 7. He and I hadn't eaten dinner. Su Xingyun wanted me. He wanted to take me to Hot Pot for a proper meal. I meant to refuse, but I couldn't say no. Unable to resist Su Xinyao's enthusiasm, halfway through the hot pot, a waiter came out from behind us carrying a cake. A cake appeared. It had many layers. There were candles lit on top. I froze for a moment, then Su Xinyan and the staff clapped together. They started singing happy birthday to me. I didn't expect him to even remember my birthday, and I certainly never imagined. He planned a surprise for my birthday. Happy birthday, Chengyan. Su Xinyan pulled out a piece of cake from behind her back. Watch that looked priceless. I liked this watch more than the one Shenjichi had bought. I liked this one more. After dinner, he walked me back downstairs at my building. After he left, I was just about to go upstairs. Then, after more than 2 years, I saw Shenjichi, whom I hadn't seen. She stood in a white dress at the door, holding Shen Ruanruan's hand for 2 years. During that time, she was 7 years old. She'd grown a bit taller. Her face was still a little chubby. The baby fat on her cheeks had lessened a bit. She looked more and more lively and cute. She was already showing signs of being a beauty. As soon as she saw me, she shook off Shenjichi's hand. She ran toward me. Daddy, if it had been before, I would have crouched down and scooped her up. But now I'm distant. I stepped back half a step. I gently shook my head. I said, I'm not your dad. Ruan burst into tears. Daddy, don't you want me anymore? What did I do wrong? Daddy, why won't you forgive me? I let out a soft sigh. 2 years ago, he was in Ningxi. After he came back, he called Ningxi Daddy. When he called me Uncle Gu, my connection with him was over. It was over. I'm not her father. He's not her father by blood. She belongs to Shenjichi. She's adopted. She may be Shenjichi's daughter, but she'll never be my daughter. Because Ruan was crying so loudly, I didn't want to wake the neighbors, Mr. Shen. It's cold tonight. You'd better hurry. Take your daughter home early. Ruan is your child too. Your child, I smiled. I answered, no, she's not my daughter. She calls me Uncle Gu. She told me herself. Ningxi is her dad. She doesn't like me. You don't like me either. Since neither of you likes me, then why come to me? I'm done talking. Shenjichi frowned. Kids don't know any better. Why are you picking on him, Chengyan? You've changed. Yes, I've changed. I don't love you anymore. I used to grovel to win her over. She felt invincible because she was loved. He was sure I would never leave him. He always felt that way. I loved him so much I couldn't defy him or say no. But he was wrong. I'm a person, not his possession. No one is born to love you. When love fades, all that's left for him are old memories. Mr. Shen, I didn't argue with her. Like you said, she's just a child. Please leave. This is my home. I have nothing to do with you. What are you and your daughter bothering me for? I grabbed my keys. I opened the door and stepped into the room. Shenjichi caught my wrist. Gu Chengyan. I never said we were over. You're my boyfriend. How could you? He glanced at my wrist. Shenjichi's expression went cold. Who gave you this? Whose is it? Mind your own business. I pulled my hand away. I pulled my hand free and said firmly, please leave. I'm not your boyfriend. I'm not Shen Ruanruan's father. I was about to shut the door when Shenjichi shoved it open. Gu Chengyan, how could you betray me? How could you not be my boyfriend? We've been together for years. You said you loved me. How could you suddenly do this? When I heard it, my heart sank. My heart grew cold, so he'd known all along. My feelings were so obvious. How could he not know? At our standoff, Su Xingwei suddenly appeared. Chengyan, you forgot to bring the form back. Seeing Su Xinyu, became furious and said coldly, so this is your betrayal. Because of her, that bitch. I frowned. I shot back, you're being way too full of yourself. I'm not you. I don't go around leading people on. While I'm in a relationship, I wouldn't flirt with another man. Shenjichi was about to speak. Su Xingyan stepped in and stopped him. Mr. Shen, aren't you being a bit overbearing? Chengyan used to work for you. How was he before? That has nothing to do with now. It's late, you're disturbing him. You're keeping him from resting. Shenjichi was furious. He glared at Su Xingyun. And you, who do you think you are? Interfering in our affairs? Xingyun chuckled. Suddenly, he stepped in front of me. He slipped his arm around mine. He smiled smugly. What am I then? Who do you think you are to me? I'm Chengyan's boss now. And he's my boyfriend. As long as he agrees to marry me, I can Give him half the shares, Su Xingyan said. I froze. I knew him. He was trying to help me, but that comment was way too brazen. Shen Jiqi's face darkened when she heard him. He scowled and left with Shen Ruan. I felt unusually helpless.